In this video, I will be showing you how to make a 12-piece skirt step by step. Make sure you watch this video to the end because you wouldn't want to miss out any part of this detailed tutorial. Do good by subscribing to my channel so that you won't miss out any of my future videos. My name is Bolaji and this is Regi School of Fashion. Now I will be showing you how to make a 12-piece skirt. In making a 12-piece skirt, I have my basic skirt pattern drafted already. So this is for the front and this is for the back. Okay, the difference I have between this pattern and a basic skirt pattern is the dart I added on the waistline. So I added the dart in two places. The first dart was placed exactly on the bust span measurement point. So this is the real dart point on the basic skirt pattern. And for the second dart, I took the measurement I have left from the side seam to the first dart point and I got the midpoint, which is here. So from this point, I took half of an inch on both sides and I constructed my darts on 5 inches point. Okay, so after which I added extra 1 inch as the extra dart I added. So this is the second dart. I have to return this 1 inch back to the side. So I returned 1 inch back to the side and I reconstructed this to the hip level. So this is the only difference I have between this pattern and the pattern I used in cutting out the 6 and the 8-piece skirts. Okay, so now that I have my pattern drafted, the next step is to slash my pattern. In slashing my pattern, I will be taking this downward on a straight line to the knee level, and I will make sure I have a straight line. So in achieving a straight line, I will measure out what I have from here. So that is 7.5 inches for this, and for this is 4.25. Then I will make this a straight line. Okay, so this is for the back panel and I will be repeating the same process on the front panel. Now I have my lines drawn out, so the next step is to slash my pattern. So in slashing my pattern, I will cut out the 2 darts I have on the waistline. Okay, then I will open it up like so. So now I have my front panel slashed into 3 places. Okay, can you see what I have? This is the center front side, this is the side seam side, and this is the middle side. So I will have to label my pattern appropriately so that I will not get things mixed up. Okay, so firstly I will label the waistline. So this is the waist and this is the knee. This is the waist and this is the knee. The waist, the knee. Okay, so this is the center front. This is the center front side. So I will label this as front 1, front 2, and front 3. So this is the side seam. I can place a side seam here as well. So this is the middle piece. So you have to do this so that you don't get your patterns mixed up. So now that I have my patterns labeled, the next step is to place notches on the dart point. So this part I have my dart, so I will place 2 notches on this side, the first one and the second one. So the second one is below the first one, so you have to take note of that as well. So this is my dart point on the middle piece, so I'll place this. The second notch is going to be below the first notch. So for the middle piece, I have my dart on both sides. I have that here and I have that here, so I'll place my notches as well. Then the second notch below the first notch. So now I have this. I have my lines on the knee level already, so I don't need to place any notches on that point. Okay, so on the side seam piece, so here is my dart point here. I will place my notch, and the second notch is going to be below the first one. So now I have my 3 pieces for the front panel. This is the first one, F1, F2 and F3. So I'll put this aside and I will work on the back panel. So here is the back panel. I will cut out the 2 that I have on the waistline and I will slash this into 3 places as well. Okay, now I have my back panel slashed into 3 places. So the next step is to label my patterns appropriately, and I will place notches on the dart points. Okay guys, now I have all my patterns slashed and properly labeled. Okay, so this is the 3 pieces for the back and the 3 pieces for the front. So the next step is to show you how to cut this out on your fabrics. Okay guys, now I will be showing you how to cut out your fabrics for a 12 pieces skirt. Okay, so I will start with the front panel. So for the front panel, I have 3 pieces here, the F1, F2 and F3. So I will start with the F1. Here I have my fabrics on fold, and the wideness of my fabrics is 12 inches. So how do I arrive at 12 inches? The number of yards of fabrics I'm using for my 12 pieces skirt is 4 yards. So 4 yards divided by 36, I have 144. Then I divided 144 by 12, which gives me 12 inches, which means I will be having 12 inches of wideness for each of my pieces. So now I have my fabrics on fold, and the wideness of my fabrics is 12 inches as I said earlier. So I have 12 inches here from the beginning to the end. Okay, so I will start with the F1. I have my starting point line drawn out, and I added half of an inch of seam allowance. Okay, so I have the knee line also drawn out, the skirt length and the hem allowance line. Okay, so I will place this like so. I will let this fall at the center, so which means I will be getting the midpoint of my fabrics. So I will get the midpoint of my 12 inches. Okay guys, now I have my center line drawn out on my fabrics, as you can see, from the waistline downward to the skirt length point. Okay, so I will be cutting out the F1 first, that is the front first, the CF. So I have my center line drawn out on my pattern as well, so I will place this center line to match up with the center line. Okay guys, now I have my pattern pinned together with my fabrics. Okay, and this is what I have. So the next step is to add my seam allowances. I will be adding half of an inch of seam allowance on the center front, which is this side, and I will be adding half of an inch on the dart side, which is here. And I will also extend my hip level line on the fabrics and the dart line on the fabrics as well. Okay guys, now I have my seam allowances added on both sides, half of an inch here and half of an inch on the dart side. And don't forget, if you are adding your seam allowance on the dart side, it has to be from the waistline The connection has to be from the waistline to the dart point first before connecting from the dart point to the knee length. Okay, so the next step is to connect from the knee length downwards to the skirt length. In connecting from the knee length to the skirt length, I will be making use of my straight ruler like so, and I will connect from the seam allowance point downward to the edges of my fabrics on the skirt length point. Okay, so on the other side as well, I will connect from the seam allowance point to the edges of my fabrics on the skirt length point. So guys, this is what I have for the shape of my first panel of my 12 pieces skirt. Okay, so this is 12 inches wideness, and I distributed the 12 inches on both sides. So on my left hand side I have 6 inches, and on my right hand side I have 6 inches as well. So my seam allowance for the flare side of my skirt will be taken from the 12 inches. So now the next step is to cut out my fabrics. So after cutting this out, I will be having 2 pieces for the F1, and for the F2 as well 2 pieces, for the F3 2 pieces, so which makes it 6 pieces in total for the front panel. So I will start cutting from the waistline, and I will cut on the seam allowance line. So I will stop the diagonal cut on the skirt length point. Can you see what I have? Then from the skirt length to the hem allowance line is going to be a straight cut like so, and I will come to the other side and cut this out as well. I'm cutting on the seam allowance line. So now when I get to the skirt length point, I will stop and I will take it downward on a straight line to the hem allowance line. So with this, when I'm ending the skirt, I will not have shortage or excess. Okay guys, now I have this cut out, and this is what I have after cutting. So I have 2 pieces for the F1. You can see. Okay guys, I need to tell you this: when cutting out your fabrics, make sure you maintain the same positioning in cutting out all the panels. What do I mean by this? If you want to cut your fabrics on right side facing the right side, make sure you maintain that position of right side facing the right side for all the panels. And if you want to fold your fabrics wrong side facing the wrong side, make sure you maintain the same positioning for all the panels, purposely because the patterns are different on both sides. You can see what I have on the F1. This side is different from this side. Okay, this is the dart side. So when I'm constructing the pieces together, the dart side must be on the dart side. So I cannot put the dart side on the center front side. So that is why I have to maintain the same positioning or folding for my fabrics when cutting out all the panels. If you want to fold your fabrics right side facing the right side, make sure you maintain the positioning for all the panels. Now the next step is to place notches on my fabrics. I will place my notches on the waistline. So this has to be on both sides. So I can place notches on both sides because the fabric is going to be in pieces. So there is no unfold side here. So on the knee level, on the hip level, I will place my notches. Okay, then on the dart point, so that is the point I placed 2 notches. So I will place a notch on this as well. So with this, I will know this is the dart point. On the knee level, I will place my notches on both sides. Then on the skirt length, I will place my notches as well. Okay guys, now I have my notches placed on my fabrics. So with this, I can separate my pattern from my fabrics. Okay guys, now I have my F2 pattern pinned together with my fabrics, and this is what I have. I have my fabrics unfold, and the wideness of my fabrics on the skirt length is 12 inches. I got the midpoint. I placed my pattern just the same way I cut out the F1. Okay, so I'm just showing you this so that you can see what I'm trying to explain. So this is the F2. So on this pattern, I have my dart line on both sides. Okay, so I added my half of an inch of seam allowance on both sides of the pattern as well, after which I connected from the knee point downward to the skirt length point on this side and on this side. So for this side is 6 inches, for this side as well is 6 inches. Okay, when I was folding my fabrics in cutting out the F2 pattern, I flipped my fabrics in an opposite direction. Okay, so this is the part I cut out the lower part of my F1. So this is my F1. So this is the side I cut out the lower part of my F1, because the lower part is wider than the upper part. So when I wanted to cut out the F2, in order to manage my fabrics properly, I flipped this over. I made the upper part of my pattern to fall on the narrower parts of the fabrics. So when I wanted to cut the F3, this is going to be in an opposite direction as well. So if I want to cut my fabric, which is the F3, I will position it like so. It's going to be in an opposite direction. So in this case, the knee level is going to be on this side, and the waist level will be on this side. So when I'm cutting the next one, so that is how I will continue. So with this, I will cut out my fabrics properly and well managed. Even with this, you need to study the patterns you have on your fabrics carefully, purposely because not all patterns will allow you to manipulate your fabrics like so. There are some patterns whereby there's a particular design on the lower part taped on the lower part of the fabrics. Okay, and this is different from the one on the upper part. So when you are cutting your fabrics, this type of fabrics will not allow you to be flipping your pattern over. So you have to carefully study the pattern you have on your fabrics before cutting it out. But as for me, the pattern I have on my fabrics allow me to do this. So now I will be cutting this out. After cutting this out, I will cut out the remaining pieces, which is the F3, the B1, the B2, and the B3. So I will be cutting this off the camera. The same formula, the same method, the same way. There is no difference. I'll place this like so, add my seam allowances on both sides and cut it out, and I'm folding on 12 inches wideness. Okay guys, now I have all my pieces cut out, as you can see. So this part is for the front panel, while this part is for the back panel. 1 2 3 for the front, then 1 2 3 for the back. Okay, for each of these I have 2 pieces, so which makes it 6 pieces in total for the front panel and 6 pieces in total for the back panel. All together makes 12 panels. So the next step is to separate my pattern from my fabrics, so after which I will be putting the pieces together. Okay, so after cutting out the main fabrics, I also cut out the lining I will be using in finishing the skirt. So I cut out my lining to stop on the knee level. You can see what I have. So I cut out my lining the exact way I have my fabrics. The only difference is the length of my lining. So my lining will not get to the hemline. So if you want your lining to get to the hemline, you can as well go for that. Okay, but when you are doing this, make sure you do not add more than half of an inch as a seam allowance on the hemline, because you will be finishing the hemline with the lining. But as for me, I want the lining to stop on the knee level. So I have all the lining cut for each pieces. Can you see what I have? So I have the lining cut for all pieces. So the next step is to separate the lining from the fabrics. So after which I will be joining the pieces together. In joining the pieces together, I will be joining the front panels together separately, and I will be joining the back panels separately as well. Okay, so the way I join the main fabrics is the way I will be joining the lining. So now let's start with the front panel. Guys, now I have only my front panels here, as you can see. Okay, I label this as front 1, front 2 and front 3. So this will help me to distinguish between the front and the back panels, because each panels are not of the same shape. So you have to label your fabrics accordingly before joining the pieces together.